All right, everyone, we have head coach of the men's basketball team, Chris Holtmann. We are going to get started with Stephen Hellwagon.
Hey, Coach. Bet you're glad that this week is finally here and you guys are ready to go. In the last call, you kind of addressed positions 1 through 4 pretty handily, but kind of left some things unsaid about the center position. Just can you give us an idea as you kind of start the season what you see the minute breakdown will be? Presuming maybe Kyle would start there, but also hoping to get minutes from Jallow and Key, and just individually how those guys have grown and developed, I guess, during the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, still something we're working through and trying to figure out. And, I think right now, without the benefit of scrimmages and live action against other opponents, it's hard to put a definitive number on minutes or anything. What I will say is I think both Zed and Ibrahima will play minutes at that position, and both guys need to be ready to go. Obviously, Kyle, EJ, those 4 guys will play minutes at that position, but I think some of it's going to depend on the game, matchups. We've seen some good things out of all the guys. Zed's done some good things. He continues to get in better shape. Let me just open by saying a couple things, and then we'll dive back into questions. Looking forward to getting started here. And as you mentioned, Steve, I'm really grateful to our medical personnel that have allowed this to happen. I hope everybody is safe and healthy and well out there. The opportunity to play games right now in the midst of what we're going through is a blessing every time we get a chance to do that. So really grateful for where we're at. We understand there's going to be some obvious interruptions, but we're excited about continuing to prepare. Listen, I think we've got 2 games this week. The first one in Illinois State is the one I'm here to talk about today. I think it's going to be a game that is going to be a really challenging opener. It's a program that comes from one of the best leagues in the country, and they have beaten, I believe, last couple years, South Carolina, Georgia, Ole Miss. They have a lot of returning shooting on their roster, and as well as some depth on the interior that they've added from either transfers or junior college. So they have some returning starters. Certainly one of we expect it to be a great challenge, and we expect it to be a really highly competitive game. Anytime you're playing a team from the Missouri Valley, I think that's what you have to expect. They're a well-coached, really hard-playing team that's got some really talented players. So we need to have good preparation here these next couple days.
Good.
Up next, Adam Jardy.
Yeah. Hi, Chris. With obviously the game on Wednesday, what needs to happen between now and Wednesday? Like, what sort of checks and positive or negative tests and things do you need to undergo? And also Illinois State, like, what needs to happen between now and Wednesday so the game does happen?
Well, both teams need to have clean tests these next couple days. And our training staff is in contact with their training staff, Adam, in making sure that their tests are negative, and we'll do a test when they arrive on Tuesday, and we'll do a test when they arrive Wednesday morning before the day of the game. And my understanding is if there's a positive test, the game will not happen. So, I think understanding that in non-conference, that's a kind of the risk you take if there's a positive test, that the game won't happen. But we're optimistic that because of the regular testing that's happening, that we'll be in good shape.
And is it the kind of thing, do you have communication with them, like leading into this week, just to kind of see how things are going, probably in ways that you wouldn't have communication with teams in normal years?
Yes, not necessarily here recent, but when we scheduled the game, which I guess you could say is pretty recent. When we scheduled the game, those were some of the conversations we had on the front end, that in order for us to play this game, this is what is going to have to happen. This is the Big Ten standard. So we have had those conversations with every non-conference opponent.
Up next, Patrick Murphy.
Hey, Chris, you've addressed a little bit, team needing to be flexible, needing to realize that games could be postponed or canceled or whatnot. And you're starting to see that already. What impact does it have that these guys have seen other sports, the football team, professional sports kind of go through this already? The NFL has had to move games. Obviously, the football team had a game canceled. The fact that they kind of have an idea of what this is like, does that help at all for them to understand, okay, this is kind of the new normal for this year?
Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. I think that they understand that's the expectation, that those things are going to happen in a season like ours. I said last time we were together that we're going to schedule 27 games. We'd love to be able to play 27 games, but I'm not necessarily optimistic that that's going to happen. I think there's going to be things that are going to happen, whether it's your team or the team you're playing, non-conference or conference. But, I think it helps them kind of observing what has happened really outside of the NBA bubble, right? Every league has had interruptions, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case. So they're aware of that. But, after 29 practices, they're hoping that they can compete against somebody else instead of their teammates. I think they're ready for that, and hopefully we can provide that opportunity for them.
Up next, Bill Landis.
Hey, Chris, will Musa be available for the game on Wednesday?
He'll be a game time decision, Bill, but, he's making progress. We've been able to get him in more live work, but it'll ultimately be a game time decision with him in terms of his availability and the amount of minutes that we feel comfortable he can play.
And the last time you did one of these calls, you talked about Justice's versatility, specifically on offense. I think you were talking, but I guess I don't know how to ask this without being a little, or I have to ask it delicately, I guess. He did not come from a program that played a ton of defense.
You've never been known to ask delicate questions, Bill.
Yeah,
so that'll be a first.
Yes. How is Justice coming along defensively for you guys? Because it seems like he's going to have to be a really important piece to your perimeter defense.
Yeah, I think he recognizes that his experience in a lot of ways helped him at his previous institution, but there were some things lacking in. He would take personal accountability in his effort on that end. And it was a different system. They played a lot of zone, but it does need to be a real growth area for him. There's no question that he's got to continue to grow in that area. He's done some good things. He really has. I think he wants to have the reputation of a versatile defender. I think he understands that is always the part of a really good player. And I appreciate that. I think that's the first kind of place you begin with players. Do they care on that end? And he's shown that he cares, and now his technique just needs to continue to improve. And he's shown real good signs of that.
Up next, Whitney Harding.
Hey, Chris. You've talked about how everybody needs to be flexible, and other programs, teams have done this. I asked Coach McGuff this same question. It's one thing to say all those things. How are you seeing the guys' mental health, and how are you guys helping them kind of stay upbeat, stay focused on what you can focus on? Because it's so much easier said than done.
Yeah, it is, Whitney. There's no question. I think that's true for all of us right now, but our responsibility as coaches and a coaching staff is to our players and making sure that they are responding to those things the right way. And I think as much as anything, you want to have open dialogue. And you want to, we had a really open dialogue about last week about parents not being allowed to come to games. And I actually followed back up the day after we talked about it, because the news that I got was right before practice, and I felt like I didn't probably give it the necessary conversation that it needed among our group. So I circled back the next day and kind of asked them, what their reaction to it was and how did they feel. I guess I put on my amateur psychologist hat there for a moment. And so I think in the midst of all those things, you're just trying to have really open dialogue with them. And they were disappointed, but they've moved on here quickly. They hope that at some point that'll change and they'll be able to get their parents to come see them play.
With regards to now basketball, how are you liking your guard depth, because you guys have gotten a little bit more recently, and how is that position looking heading into this first game?
Well, I'm anxious to see. I'm anxious to see a lot of things. And like I said, we have a really good opponent in which we're going to get to learn a lot about our group. So I'm anxious to see what our guard depth looks like. And outside of Jimmy, is that Justin, Gene, who are we playing at some of those positions behind the 1 and the 2? So I'm looking forward. I think we've seen some good things in practice, but again, it's been against each other. We've also seen, I think very much we are a work in progress. We've got guys who are playing different roles and new roles than what they did last year, expanded roles. We certainly have some new guys that we're integrating into our rotation. So I think much like a lot of teams right now, we're a work in progress here this early in the season.
Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Up next, Brendan Gulick.
Hey, Chris, nice to talk to you. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is about preparation for a game here this week. Can you discuss maybe some of the challenges in trying to get ready for a team that you don't have film on, when you didn't have preseason scrimmages and exhibitions, and maybe you just don't have the body of work to go off of as you might, in January?
It's a great question because it is a challenge, and those scrimmages tell you so much early in the season. You remember last year, I think we learned a lot both in the first and the second half because they were 2 very different halves at Louisville in that scrimmage. The exhibition game, told us a lot. So I think what it does is, as a coach, it presents a little more anxiety going into your first game against a good opponent. What adds to that now is they have a lot of different personnel. They certainly have some returning. They have a couple really good guards returning that were a significant part of their rotation last year. But just the number of new faces that they have, whether it's they have a terrific junior college guard as well as some big junior college bodies that are coming in. So I think some of those unknowns present an interesting challenge. I think we'll have to make some adjustments as we learn more about their personnel in the course of the game.
And my second question is maybe a little bit more big picture. I'm kind of making a cross-sport reference here. So Brian Hartline tweeted after the Saturday football game how proud he was of his guys because most fans don't really understand what a college athlete has to go through. In another example, Joey Galloway said about the Northwestern football team that he thought they were a bunch of fighting Reese Davises. And there's all this outside noise that maybe people don't have an appreciation for. And so in a time of year where there's a lot of prognostications, where there's lots of polls and things are being written and said left and right, how do you keep your guys kind of narrowly focused and not paying so much attention to what's being written or what's being said on social media and things like that, because there's an awful lot of it this time of year.
Yeah, well, good for Brian. I saw that and completely agree with his comment in the direction he was going. I think it was his way of really acknowledging the significant pressure that athletes at this level, and obviously him being a terrific athlete himself, the amount of pressure that athletes go through at this level, and certainly on the stage that they're on, that teams are on at this level. I think the conversation really needs to happen. Let me back up here. I think that conversation about limiting your consumption from the outside is one that we've had with our team in the off season, and I think you have to really challenge your players to make sure they understand where they're finding their truth and who they are as players and who they are as people. And I think there are really good sources in each player's life of truth and honesty, and you hope that they're consuming that more than anything else on the outside. And that takes discipline for all of us, players, coaches, because I think when we do consume the appropriate truth from those people that we really value their opinion, what it does is it helps us grow and it brings great perspective. And when I've went counter to that is when I felt myself lacking perspective the most. So we try to challenge our players with having great discipline in that area, knowing in today's world there's a lot of noise.
Thank you.
Up next, Tim Hall.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey, Tim.
I was wondering if you could layer on top of what Adam was asking earlier. You mentioned if there was one positive for the other team that a game wouldn't happen. Is this sort of the same, like building off what the Big Ten's, what the COVID policy for football was, where is that going to be the norm? If it's one positive for anyone on either team, is a game going to be off? Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I'm assuming I'm allowed to say that. I'll probably get a text if I wasn't.
Sorry.
But, no, you're good. No worries. As far as I understand right now, Tim, because teams are under different testing protocols, that is really a non-conference decision. So conference games will be different. And because we're in regular testing as a program ourselves, I don't believe that would necessarily mean that our game would be off if we had one positive test on our side. I think it all involves contact tracing, as you're well aware of, and limiting the spread and the concern about that, which I totally understand and respect. But because the NCAA minimum is 3 tests a week, I believe that's why the Big Ten put that policy in place.
Okay.
I hope I'm making sense there.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, because obviously there's way less players on a basketball team. If it's along the lines of that same sliding scale with percentages, that would mean it clearly it takes way, fewer positive tests, correct?
It does, and I don't want to get into the specifics of all that, but yeah, I understand your point.
Yeah. Thanks.
Up next, Stephen Means.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Stephen.
Now that you can talk about the 2021 class, with Michi coming in January, and given that we're in a pandemic and he's not necessarily around you guys right now, when he gets here, is there any protocol or anything he has to do before he's cleared to just start practicing and start doing stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be completely with his health in mind right now. He'll have a specific protocol that we'll need to follow with him in terms of returning him, or excuse me, starting him to practice. It'll include a full comprehensive physical and really review of where he's at physically, because it's unique in adding someone to your roster at this point, and then eventually into games. I think the biggest thing for us with Michi is to think long term and what's in his best interest long term. And what's in his best interest is uh, to be really deliberate and smart about how we get him into regular, consistent practices and ultimately into games. So there will be a protocol to that. COVID adds to that, but even outside of COVID, we would want to be sensitive to just kind of where his body is at physically right now. And we do the same thing with our guys in the summer. We wouldn't throw our guys when they get here in the summer right into a full-scale practice. It wouldn't be in their best interest. So we'll be what I believe is smart about that, and we'll be in great consultation with our medical team.
And then for right now, with the guys who are here, it's a lot of versatility, as you talked about multiple times. You guys went small at times last year, but it was never really with EJ. Do you think you could go small and have EJ Liddell playing the 5 with what's around him on this team?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. You could call it the 5, I guess. Could he guard the 5 some? Sure. I think it depends on some of our other guys and maybe the length that we have at different spots on the floor. But I think EJ is a big guy that I think is continuing to learn how to play outside. He's played inside most of his life and shown a great ability to do that. So do I think that it would be smart and the best use of him to exclude him from being a guy that plays that way? I don't think that would be in his best interest. So I think we'll continue to utilize him at different spots. And if that means he's playing kind of as a power forward and guarding some of those guys, then he'll do that.
Up next, Colin Hassel.
Hey, Chris, you mentioned a couple times about defense being either your biggest concern or one of your biggest concerns. Is that more so coming from a coach who just hasn't seen a game or an exhibition or anything, or is that something that you lost Caleb, you have some injuries on the wing, and that's a legitimate concern for you as you near Wednesday?
No, it's real. Yeah, it's real. I think we diagnosed that early on is something that we are going to be challenged with this year. I think people forget how much growth Caleb took in that third year, and how tremendous he was at covering up spots around and protecting the rim. Different than what you would think a rim protector, but terrific in what in walling up, being in the right spots, talking the game, and his brother was terrific with it as well. So I think the loss of those two guys presents a significant challenge for us. And our defensive numbers as a whole were really good last year. Our numbers were terrific. They weren't as great in league play. Some of that was the league had one of the best defensive years in the history of the program, history of the Big Ten. But I think it's an area of that we have to continue to get better in, that we are challenging our guys with. We've got to coach well and play well to be a good team. There's no question about that.
I remember, Dwayne had talked a little bit in the offseason about how much better he wanted to become as a decision maker. And when he was saying that you guys hadn't started practicing yet, now that you've seen, I think you said 29 practices, where is he in that growth and that development, since, he's obviously going to play a huge role in that end of the court view?
You know, he's made progress. I think we chart assists and turnovers every day. I think offensively for him, that area is something he's really focused on, as well as his 2-point field goal efficiency, which are both areas that have to really grow and improve. And that involves decision making. Bottom line, that involves decision making. I know he's shown real progress in practice. Again, I'm anxious to see once we play in games where that's going to get. But I know that's been on his radar, along with, you know, him being a guy that we can count on consistently on the defensive end.
And just quickly, do you have an update on where Seth is, and do you have any sort of timeline with him?
Yeah, making progress. I couldn't tell you right now when we think he'll be ready to go in game action. He has done more in practice in the last couple of weeks. We've begun to add him into some live action, but I couldn't give you a timeline right now.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we still have a few more questions, so let's limit it to one, please. Up next, Dom Taberry.
Is Dom on mute? He's done this before, I think.
Dom, you got to unmute.
I think you're on mute, Dom. That's normally what coaches are saying to me, my staff saying to me when I'm talking to recruits.
Okay, we'll come back to Dom. Up next, we'll go with Tony Gerdeman.
Chris, you mentioned anxiety that comes from not knowing or not being able to see your opponent, not being able to see your team against other teams yet. Do you have more anxiety about your own team or the opponent this week?
Yeah, you know, I think as a coach, it's both. I'm excited for our group. I'm excited that it's a game that's going to really challenge us in a lot of ways. And, you know, you schedule games like this, if you look at their history of net or RPI, however you look at it, because of the league they're in and the success they've had, it's always really good. Always really good. So I think both. I think you're anxious to see in this environment how your team responds without fans, all the stuff that's going on, and then I think you're anxious to see how we respond to playing a really good team. So I think it's those things.
Up next, Patrick Murphy.
Yeah, Chris, just wanted to get your reaction to Caleb not getting drafted and then Jay Sean signing with the Rockets. Obviously two different things, but guys you worked with.
Well, Caleb, there's no question in my mind that Caleb can and will help an NBA organization. And not getting drafted, I think what most people understand now, can often be a better situation for young players because they get an opportunity to find a team that really does value their specific skill set. There is no question in my mind that Caleb is going to really add his game, his skill set to an NBA organization that wants him. So I'm excited about that and have been in touch with his family the last couple weeks. And, you know, they were given indications that it could potentially go down this road leading up to it. But he's in a really good place right now. As far as JT, listen, I don't have to say to anybody listening to this call how special of a player and kid Jay Sean Tate is. He embodies so much of what you want in a competitor, a teammate. He has taken a path that if you go and you look at NBA rosters right now, you'll find guys that have been in the league for 5, 6, 7, 8 years that have taken a similar path to Jay Sean Tate. But it's usually guys like him that have the stuff that is required. He's got tremendous work ethic. He has NBA defensive versatility. There's no question. And I'm thrilled for him. I just got done texting him. I love him as a kid, and I think he's going to have a long career. And he'll have to prove it like everybody does. I'm 100% convinced he's going to have a long NBA career.
Up next, Jacob Benji.
Hey, Chris. Just with this different season being an empty arena, how important is it going to be to maintain the energy from the coaches and from those on the bench?
Yeah, it's going to be different, and I think that's going to be critical. Players are going to be separated with distance between the chairs, so there's going to be a lack of connectivity that you're going to have to fight. I think the enthusiasm and the energy in the building is all going to be created by your group. So no question, that is going to be something that's going to be important to us, both home and road.
Up next, Adam Jardy.
Chris, is everybody aside from Seth available? And do you know what your starting lineup would be right now?
Yeah, everybody is available. Again, we're still kind of evaluating Musa's return and what that will look like. But as of now, everybody is available. As far as the starting lineup, I couldn't give you an exact one right now. Or I could, but I won't.
Thanks.
And final question, Stephen Hellweg.
Well, I want to squeeze in two real quick. Caleb Wesson, undrafted. I know the timing with the draft being held in November is unusual. If a guy goes undrafted in July, would you ever be in favor of him if he has eligibility left, some flexibility with the NCAA to allow them to come back? And then the other thing is just 3 Big Ten teams in the top 10 to start the season, and none of them are Michigan State, who's also kind of lurking there at like 12, and then you guys in Michigan and Rutgers, 7 Big Ten teams in the top 25. Just how big of a slugfest is this going to be the next few months? So those two topics, if you can cover them, please.
Yeah, I would entertain that. I think those are conversations you'd have with the player if he didn't get drafted. You know, typically guys go down that road and, you know, they're really 2 feet committed to that process. So you'd have to have honest conversations about them jumping back into your team and summer workouts and all those things. But certainly you'd consider that for sure as a coach, but you want to have those conversations. Listen, I've said it really for the last year and a half plus that the Big Ten's the best league I've ever been a part of. It's the best league in the country. It's the best basketball league in the country and deepest. Now we've got to have a good non-conference. I think you mentioned and rattled off the number of teams that are in the top 10, and clearly Michigan State should be in there. They're worthy of being a top 10 team. I don't think most people think about that or look at rankings. I couldn't tell you right now really what the top 25 looks like. Our concern is preparing well here today and tomorrow for Illinois State. The Big Ten will come here soon enough, and I think everybody on this call understands the gauntlet that's going to be. But we've got a lot of progress to make here on the day-to-day before we get to that.
Oh.
All right, that is it for Coach
Okay.
Holt. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.